Okay. I'll start obviously by appreciating your efforts in publishing whatever information that comes to you, especially from our ordinary citizens, giving them a platform to speak. It's a noble thing. You are doing a good job. Pick up to yourself, Coolant, yes, sir. So, and also to take this opportunity to greet your listeners, appreciating them for showing such interest in the things pertaining the day-to-day running of our country, our great country. We obviously, I will try to be as brief as possible, but it is important to note that this audio is gonna be probably unusually long than mamwe atinombo teerera achiuya. It's gonna be long because we are going to touch on a number of issues which I feel now with what is going on as we speak, the movements that are going on in our country, what is happening in the patriotic liberation movement equally. So where we need to appreciate that we are where we are today as a country as a result of Operation Restore Legacy. Therefore, before I delve into the process and how things should go if we are going to reset that operation. Resetting that operation is not obliterating it in any way. It's reminding those that were ended with that mandate, their objective, their mission, and their core business, what they were supposed to achieve with that document. It's a document that was presented to them in 2016. Mid-2016, just after the Tajamuka Says Chikile campaign. It was a document meant to bring back our country to its glory, the restoration of our legacy as a people, and also the legacy of President Robert Mugabe in his capacity as a statesman and a nationalist. So let me go back in history and on how that document came to be, the path that it followed, and to the day that it was then initiated as an operation that really turned our political situation in our country in that year, 2017. So it starts during the Tajamuka Says Chikile campaign, which, as we all know, was a move, a political move that emanated from within the patriotic liberation movement, raising concerns that the factional fights that were happening had then made the ruling party ignorant to its core purpose, which is delivering back home to our people their peace dividend. So in 2016, the first solidarity movement was launched in KwaZulu-Natal, which is Durban. That is the group that went to deliver a petition to the Premier's office in Durban. And it had a number of demands. Amongst those demands was the immediate vacating of office by the then President, Comrade Robert Mugabe. May he so continue to rest in peace. And coming from that, we had started this solidarity movement so that we brainstorm, continue to discuss, put our input from wherever we are, to put our input for the stability of our country. So when that happened, a number of things were at play. It is important to note that as smart as we are as Zimbabweans, we sometimes tend to be emotional. We then make emotional decisions most of the time, especially when it comes to the politics of our country. We then make emotional decisions, even though we are smart people. If we choose to follow a smart path, we achieve a lot. So KZN Solidarity Movement, we formed it together with other fellow Zimbabweans, brothers. I still regard them even as brothers, but they was our greatest departure from that was how we were supposed to handle the vacating from office of President Mugabe. We then agreed that no, in terms of numbers, I got outnumbered on my approach, because my approach was that we should always remember that we cannot humiliate such a leader out of power. He needs to go out in a more respectful way. We look at the positives, but with a clear mandate to make sure that he cannot go on, but respectfully. That's where the greatest departure came. 2016, I left Durban. We then went to Gauteng, briefly stayed in Gauteng, then began on the skeletal structure of the document that we codenamed Operation Restore Legacy. From there, we mid 2016, around July, don't remember well, but around that time I went to Zimbabwe with that skeletal structure. We then continued to build on it, doing further investigations, assessing the environment in Zimbabwe, and really seeing the impact of what was going on, and finishing that document, Operation Restore Legacy. The document on delivery was sorry for this. Hold on just a bit. So on delivery, this document was speaking about a number of issues, which really and it was directed to the president straight, President Robert Mugabe at that time, and I believe that with the channel that we used for the document to go there, it went straight to him. It was addressing a number of issues, most importantly, how our economy had deteriorated, especially in the eyes of the public, how it was impacting our people, and how it had impacted our people in the diaspora. We mentioned a number of things in terms of how our people are viewed, how our people are handled in foreign countries. We mentioned how devalued our people are because of our country, because of that government. We mentioned a number of things whereby our political system has created people that go out there and say some things that are not really true from an emotional perspective, whereby they really seek to cultivate, to rather harvest sympathy. You will have to say, no, we are here because our government, our country is like this and this and this and all that. So we addressed it for what it was. We addressed issues on what kind of opportunities our people are getting here, what kind of lives that our people are getting. Because as we were, Zimbabwe is a country that loves its people. That one thing has to be known by every Zimbabwean, to know that wherever you are around the globe, here in Africa, wherever a Zimbabwean is, there will always be an eye that really looks at how we are living our lives, how the situation is impacting us wherever we are. That is Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe loves its people. That one I cannot mince my words on that. So we reported it back as it is, direct to the president via that document. We were telling him the lives that you live, how things are tough to you, all our people in the diaspora, and we addressed also issues that we managed to pick during the time that we stayed in Zimbabwe. That period, it was a period of about 6 months leading into 2017. We then communicated everything. This is what our people are doing. Our youth, most of them, some, not most, some of them will then resort to crime. We talked about our sisters who, some of them, resort to prostitution in foreign lands as a way to find survival lines. You understand. We also spoke of the xenophobic violence that affected our people in the years that have gone, particularly in South Africa. We spoke about that. We also mentioned a number of things pertaining sanctions. In that document, we mentioned sanctions, and we suggested ways that we thought could, in fact, we are confident that if the Second Republic had done its part entirely, not to undermine what it has done already. It's at the end of the day, this is God at work. So what should have been done, what should be done in sanctions? We mentioned a number of things. We mentioned social media and how it was going to become a snare for our country when we remember we were dealing with a regime that was completely detached from this modern communication platforms, where our people were discrediting our country, and we proposed that the government should look into ways to balance that, and hence you saw the birth of movements like Varakashi and a number of affiliates that were really, according to that document, were centralized on policy clarity, being a conduit of information between the government, the state, and its people, so that there is clear communication, to be really honest, as we had done with that Operation Restore Legacy document, to say that, you see, it's like a broken telephone scenario whereby a message is thrown from an emotional perspective. I do not crush those emotions as a conduit of communication. I do not have to crush those emotions, but I really need to understand where these emotions are coming from, and things like that. So we talked about that social media. We talked in that document about youth participation in politics, youth participation in the economy, and basically youth participation in the social day-to-day running of our country. And in that guide also, we also mentioned a very sensitive demographic, which is the war vets, whom we had then noticed how they were being now treated. We remember the war vets had been they had been beaten up during that time, because after they held their meeting at the City Sports Center, and we pointed out that this thing, we cannot have a country where liberation war vets are treated in that way. We pointed out that these should continue to play a central role in the running of our country. They should continue to stay amongst our people, really understanding it was a way of also them trying, as the elders. You see, in a community, you have a number of war vets who see exactly what is happening in communities, and they have got ways to talk to their peers. Sometimes us, we might not send this information in a correct way. Even when we wrote that document, we took it to another elder who then, okay, fine, you guys, what you are saying, it's correct and all that, but can't you correct here? This is now communication wise. So that was the purpose also of putting OVETs in that central position. So from there, we then talked about our economy, and the development thrust that we were going to take, which does not really depend on funding, international funding. It's looking at what we have and using what we have for development. That blueprint would have by now delivered a Zimbabwe where not 50-50, now it's a 50-50. Our country is divided. There are people that are really hungry and do not even have hope in it. There are people who are also hungry but see the hope based on how they persuasion wise. So we spoke of a number of things that maybe we cannot, we'll try to fast forward, but this is the background that I needed to really clarify before we go any further, pertaining where we are today as a people in relation to Comrade Geza and the Blessed Mhlanga. We are really affected by what is happening to them. Comrade Geza, the persecution happening to them is not what we suggested with that document. And the incarceration of Blessed Mhlanga, it's not acceptable according to how we wanted this thing to work, how we wanted the leadership to attempt this economic recovery. They were doing a good job. Let's be honest on that, in terms of really setting up a strong economic foundation. They were doing a good job in infrastructure. We see the things that are being done, dams and all that, and it's every normal Zimbabwean should be ready to appreciate that. And but however, there are certain things that might have gone wrong. Pollard is not a Zanupf thing, it's a state thing. That thing came from the state. There is a difference between Zanupf and state. The state will be very honest in procedures that really bring development. Our hope with Pollard was that after election, it was a given. It was 100% known that ZANU-PF is going to win that election, whichever way. Many would love to argue or saying no, it cannot win or that, and we really don't have to go into that. Some believe it's rigging. There are some that really believe, well, ZANU-PF really puts in the work. We cannot argue about that. I'm not here to defend ZANU-PF in any way. What I am standing up for now, after all these years, 9 years, if I'm not mistaken, of complete silence, and maybe shooting out here and there, but of not making this clear position. It's 9 years of silence, so I will not use it to come and say, no, ZANU-PF is correct or this one is wrong or that. But the purpose of Pollard was to bring back our people together, to establish unity of purpose. And no matter how much is done, without uniting the people of Zimbabwe, we will continue to struggle. So things like Pollard were put in there. So here is what ZANU-PF is. I believe from where from what I've been saying all along, all of you are clear enough that I am a believer, a firm believer of the patriotic liberation movement. We ZANU-PF has got different type of people. It's a big movement with the people with the different persuasions, but what binds the power of ZANU-PF is our ideological standing in regards to the sovereignty of our country, where we go when we need assistance and things like that. So the greatest departure is coming from a place where we see some guys in the opposition who would go, it's desperate moves that are understandable. You have to go to hostile nations for assistance and all that. And sometimes even when people are talking about service delivery, health sector and all that, we believe in it and we know it and we see it. But the greatest departure is we cannot sell out a principle of sovereignty, a principle of self-determination because we are hungry or because we are sick. Those principles are the principles that led our forefathers to war. Many of them went to war knowing that it's a two-way street. It's either you come out of the war alive or dead. They went with that, knowing that. So they were not driven by money or the struggle, that the hunger and all that. They were driven by fighting for equality. During that time, equal access to resources. This is what took them to war. And on that principle, ZANU-PF is bound together. So when you go now to say we are going to seek support from there and there, most of the time the opposition will go to hostile countries, or hostile countries who are only looking to humiliate the liberation principle and label those that fought for independence as people who wasted their time. No, what we won, we still have it, and it's valuable. It's our sovereignty. It is our freedom from imperialists. It is our land. We still have it, and on those principles, ZANU-PF is bound. You do not appeal to a ZANU-PF by mentioning things like hunger, things like dilapidated infrastructure. You don't appeal to a ZANU-PF on those things. You appeal to ZANU-PF on sovereignty. You appeal to ZANU-PF on access of a black man to his own resources. That's where our greatest departure comes from. People in the opposition, my brother Nelson, who speak valid points in terms of development, but it cannot be development alone. So that was what made Operation Restore Legacy. And His Excellency, the current president, Comrade Emerson Mnangagwa, has done a part that we anticipated that he would do. And we were a bit skeptic about sanctions. We knew that it is going to take time for the West to really lift sanctions for this government and all that. But however, we were not worried about it because we are a sufficient nation. We knew very well that if we really do the things that we have to do in hard work, if we do the things that we need to do in transparency, we can go around these sanctions and bring out a truly developed nation, right? So we were a bit skeptic about sanctions. Yes, a number of movements have happened sanction-wise. We were also skeptic on what is termed corruption. We knew it's not an easy task for one leader in a single dispensation to achieve it. We anticipated that the vices of that disease might contaminate his reputation, like what it has done. We see people complaining a lot about Chivayo. We know Chivayo. Weekneo mukomana wePasimex. Team rakatanga kuita madhiri Pasimex, then he went into crossroads with authorities when he intercepted Maridze Kwarabizet and all that. He has not been your cleanest. He's an IT guy, very good IT guy, and he, if really guided well, managed well, can do well in that field. However, Mbava mkomana maasela mkomana, any gun can shoot. And we most of us in the party, we continued to say this relationship is not gonna be okay. And for whatever reason that relationship is happening, it's not going to be okay. It's going to tarnish the reputation of the president. We mentioned it a number of times until we kept quiet. We kept quiet about it because apart from ZANU-PF, there is no other home that really represents that thing that binds us together as ZANU-PF. Now we are now bound. We should now be bound together by the love that we have for our country. What Comrade Geza was saying is not a crime at all. What Blessed Mhlanga did in giving Comrade Geza a platform is not a crime. it might be an offense to ZANU-PF on the part of Comrade Geza, because obviously there are platforms that are used within the party that you use to reach out to leadership. But the word that I have used is it was an offense to ZANU-PF, not a crime in any way. This is what builds and shapes a successful society. Clarity. When we say what we say it as how we are seeing it. And it was the duty of a government, a responsible government, to come and clear its name, to say, no, we are doing this on corruption and this is what we are doing, and all that. The government, the duty of government is to continue to account to its people. So we personally, I had maintained my silence. After that, I was now pushed into having to say something about this, because now the response that came after, we hear now Comrade Geza is being persecuted unnecessarily. Blessed Mhlanga is in there. So the remedy to that, the most important part is the remedy. How now do we get out of this situation as a ZANU-PF, as a government, and as a country together? The remedy to that is that there is no humiliation in turning back to do the right thing. We are demanding free press. No journalist should be persecuted for telling the people or giving news to the people. A democratic society is built on principles that respect press. And those words we are not going to mince. A thriving society depends on freedom of speech. You can only understand the people that you are leading if they know, you know what exactly they are saying, be it insults, be it praise, equally. So to remedy that situation, ZANUPF, it's a suggestion. ZANU-PF has to backtrack on those arrests. Government has to backtrack on persecuting Comrade Blessed Mhlanga, Comrade Geza rather. It has to backtrack on that if we are really going to continue to see each other as transformers, people who transform. You see. So we will continue to watch the space. It's still premature to say that we are going to overthrow the constitution by removing a democratically elected president by force. That thing is steep, and we do not want to set that precedence. There are constitutional ways. If government fails to backtrack on those demands that are being made, this is what the people are saying. We have not stopped doing what we have been doing prior to writing Operation Restore Legacy as a document. We have not stopped doing that. This is what the people are saying. They are not happy with the persecution of people who choose to speak out. They are not happy with muzzling of the press. They are not. And for us all to continue to see each other in the right way, government, party, and the presidency has to backtrack on that approach. If that then doesn't happen, here is where most people are asking, signal and all that. This thing is God directed. None of us is big enough to come up with this. This is God directed. And when it is time for people to exercise their right to picketing, to protest, to petition, which is provided for in the Constitution, when that time comes, no one can stop that time, especially when that day comes, when our people understand why people protest and how to protest without being violent. The destruction of state property is not acceptable. The destruction of private property is not acceptable. Peaceful demonstration that really force those in authority to respond in a nice way to our people. The leadership that we pursue as a people is servant leadership. In that country, servant leadership is leadership that is rooted in people that are willing to die for the correct thing, to carry the burden of our people. That is servant leadership. You do not become a demigod because you have become a minister, where you threaten people using your portfolio, you threaten people for nonsense. You do not become a demigod by your proximity to the women's league. You do not do that. You do not even hint a threat to people who choose to speak out. It's wrong and will not be acceptable. This is exactly what we condemned on the previous dispensation. That vilification of our people, the era of victimization. That document contained 65% of what President Robert Mugabe said on that day when he addressed the nation, when everyone was expecting him to resign. He was talking from that document. That's why you see that papers were being shuffled by table by with people wanting him to read this one and that one. He knew the one that he was supposed to read. This is what it was saying. So we cannot accept it. And believe me, what we say and what we stand for, we are willing to die for it. If these things are not backtracked, a signal will come. We have got men of God in our country. God will speak to them. They will send a signal. There are people that will hear, people that must make moves. When the time for them to make moves has arrived, they will feel it in their bodies. You understand where I'm coming from? So we would love to continue our lives wherever we are, living out our youthful lives, learning the things that we must learn from the communities that we find ourselves in. I did not leave Zimbabwe because of poverty. I left Zimbabwe because of the love I have for my people. The violence that was happening to them here pulled me here. I have a life in Zimbabwe. I'm not in the diaspora because I am hungry. No, I did not leave Zimbabwe hungry. So we need to remind each other of these things. And no one is bigger than that principle of servant leadership. You do not become a demigod because you are deployed to a post where you must save the people. Because once that happens, you become an enemy of God himself. The voice of the people is the voice of God. Let's always remember that. So government has to backtrack on those arrests. Zanupf has to desist from issuing out threats to our people. because we, as much as we love the liberation war movement, the patriotic liberation war movement, we love Zimbabwe even more. ZANU-PF is a vehicle that delivers home to our people their peace dividend. It's not the peace dividend. It would break our hearts to come now and stand up against that movement as a whole on behalf of our people. So it's either ZANU-PF corrects itself or we come and correct it by humiliating it. So, fellow Zimbabweans, patience. I believe I have spoken to everyone. Government, ZANU-PF, opposition, we see the direction now. Do not follow rumors of war. Peace will be protected at all costs in that country. The stability of that country is at the core of why we are where we are, doing what we do. So let it be known, government, whoever, the office of the president is established to serve the people. Victimization of comrades in that movement will not be tolerated. Victimization of opposition supporters, leaders, what was happening in Nenyadzana Chabangu, humiliating stuff, destabilizing opposition party and all that. It's not acceptable. It does not have a place in the future that we want as a country. That doesn't have space. There is no room for that. We suggested the school of ideology for it not to be a ZANU-PF thing, a thing that anyone can go to understand what Zimbabwe is, to understand what binds us together. So we would love to come see each other in love, respecting each other, elders getting the respect that they deserve, us as youth getting the guidance that we require and depend on from our elders. It's not even a crime to say that the president must go. It's a persuasion which is supported by the constitution. So let us not fool each other to say people can be threatened. No one must threaten anyone. Correct the things political way. It's politics. It doesn't have to be dirty. Politics is a game that was established by God. It's not devilish. Satan came and sowed roots, seeds of division, seeds of hate. It's established by God for a purpose of saving the people. So we are going to follow that direction, or we are going to reset the whole thing.